What's up guys, I'm Mr. Audio, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. So my new plugin, TheGritBox, is an EQ emphasis and de-emphasis plugin, and what makes it special is that it adds a mathematical benefit that you would normally not get using just a regular saturator. And you can use my plugin with any other plugin too. It opens plugins within its EQ emphasis and de-emphasis matrix, but I have chosen 3 saturation algorithms that I think really work musically well with almost any scenario. That being said, EQ emphasis and de-emphasis is a technique that has been around for ages, since like the 1920s when records were first invented. See, when cutting vinyl records, a few problems occur. There's a lot of noise in the playback. There's a lot of high-end hiss and crackling that is just unpleasant to listen to over a record. Also, the bassier the sound, the bigger the grooves would have to be, sometimes allowing for the needle to skip so you wouldn't have such smooth playback. So some really smart people back then decided, hey, what if we put a filter on the music before we encode the record, like cut all of the low end out and boost the high end. And then on the playback device, we have the inverse of the filter, so it brings back the bass and lowers the high end. This has 2 added benefits. One, they'll be able to fit more on a record because the grooves will be narrower because there was less bass to encode on the record itself. 2, when you apply the inverse filter to the music, you're not only lowering the treble of the music, you're also lowering the noise floor too, because that's mostly in the high end. So if you're lowering the treble, it lowers all of the treble. So that was a really cool added benefit. This is actually just the first instance that you can see where it's very useful. Now, sometime in the 70s, when stepped EQs came out, where they were notched and there were fixed points where you could set your frequencies and gain amounts to, and Q points to. So everything about the EQ was fixed, and you could have 2 EQs in series with the saturator in between. So you kind of just set your saturation flavor, right? And then you kind of boost and cut on the other EQ and set that up, right? On the same frequency with the same gain, same Q factor and everything, right? Then you take your 2 hands and you kind of scan the frequency spectrum to see where your saturation sounds best. And basically what you're doing with this technique is you're focusing where you want your distortion to be focused at, so that those frequencies are exponentially colored more than the rest of the signal. This is probably one of the coolest techniques ever invented in audio production. Anyway, so I made a plugin that makes this extremely easy to do, and you can open other saturators within the EQ emphasis and de-emphasis matrix. You can even pair them with my saturation algorithms, which I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. It's very visually intuitive and visually appealing to look at. So we all know saturators sound good on top end instruments and vocals, right? Guitars, things that have a lot of top end. But we all know that saturators don't sound great on low end material. Well, that's where my plugin comes in. It's absolutely just magic. So when you open the plugin, this is what you should see. The bypass button is the logo. You can save presets, however, the plugin doesn't come with any presets because all material is different and you may want to saturate it differently from production to production, even if you use the same sounds. If you want to open a plugin, obviously click the plugin button. Your plugin menu here will be blank until you scan them in. If you encounter a crash during scanning, the plugin that it last scanned was the reason that it crashed. So if you want to open a plugin, don't click the open button, just double click. I make it easy to use. Set your settings, do what you want, and you can even close this window. If you want to open it again, hit open. Hit deactivate to close the plugin and deactivate all of it. If you want to close this plugin menu, just hit the X and it'll collapse. You can drag this node anywhere and it'll allow you to focus your distortion to that area. You can only boost, you can't cut. I wanted to make it simple so that anybody could use it. Auto gain compensation is only engaged when using native saturation. However, in the second version, it will be available to even third-party plugins. You can control the Q with the mouse and the command button. Control if you're on Windows. Dry wet is set to 50% by default because I find that's the sweet spot. I personally like to use grit the most. It is a sinusoidal fold saturation. Warmth is more of an analog sounding saturation, and crunch is digital clipping. So you got a nice variety of very musical saturation algorithms, and you can even use third party. So if you want to use a console emulation and maybe just hit it really hard, you can totally do that. Let's listen to what it sounds like on the big three: drum loops, kick drums, and 808s. Let's try those three and see how my plugin sounds on them. All right, first we'll listen to how it sounds on a drum loop, then we'll move on to the kick and the bass to complete the big three. All right, so this is what the drum loop sounds like without the plugin. It sounds like it was recorded well. It's just a little dead. It was recorded in a very nice and tight room. I feel like it needs some like life to really open it up. Not necessarily room sound, but just something else to give it some life. So this is without. As you can see, my plugin just adds so much life to it. Now let's play with it a little bit and see what kind of sounds you get if you saturate maybe just the low end. And I'll give you a hint. It sounds like wet trash. Now let's play around with it. You can focus in on the low end. It sounds like trash. You can focus it on the snare. But I find it sounds best when it's right up here in the high end. Listen. And as you can see, it adds so much life to that. Now let's move on to the kick in the 808. All right, so now we're going to listen to it on a kick and see how that sounds. Because usually when saturating kicks, they sound like wet cardboard. Let's just see how it sounds on a kick first. So this is what it sounds like without any processing. A lot of weight, a lot of heft. Now let's listen to an A and B, all right? Before and then after. You can hear the second one is more mid-range rich. It feels like it's got more punch, more transient information in it. The kick before the processing sounds fat, but it just sounds like it gets swallowed up in the low end on smaller playback devices such as phones and tablets and laptops. This will actually make it be able to cut through the laptops, adding some mid-range harmonic richness to it. Now let's listen to what it sounds like on an 808, because 808s always sound like wet cardboard when you saturate them. Kicks and 808s, just wet cardboard. So this is what the 808 sounds like without the saturation. See, it's got a nice tone. I feel like it's a little soft and missing a little bit of punch. Let's listen to the A and B before and after. You can really hear that the low end even got more powerful on that. Boosting the transient material of 808s can improve your low end definition. You're making it more harmonically rich. It's just not being focused in the low end so it doesn't sound like wet trash. Anyway, my EQ emphasis and de-emphasis saturation plugin is king of all the saturation plugins. If you don't believe me, there's a 14-day trial. I challenge you to try it out for yourself and prove me wrong. And on all of my lives from now on, I'll be giving one free license of the TheGritBox away to one lucky viewer. So if that sounds like you, tune in, and I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Audio, out.